So, do you guys?
You're very glitchy. A
Who
little glitchy.
knows?
Lagging a little.
Diane,
You're lagging.
Diane, you're kind of glitchy.
Yeah, you're lagging.
Sorry.
I hope it's not just me because you're lagging.
Yeah, you're also
Yeah,
kind of
it's-
lagging.
Oh,
So lagging a little bit.
Now you're not.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. So let me get this started, and you guys can see my screen. All right. Ah, big fan of morning devotion. I see. All right. Let me see. Can I share my screen? Am I allowed to? My co.
No?
Yes, you should be able to.
You're supposed to.
Okay. All right. Just give me a second here. If I can share my screen. All right. So let's start with this. All right. Present. So let me just start with a little bit of introduction. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Diane Kilalu Hack. I am the Subregion 1, which is basically New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Maryland, not Maryland, but what's it called? Connecticut. Basically, I'm a Subregion 1 EAM coordinator. I take care of young adults and youth and middle schoolers. And yeah, I am blessed to an awesome, wonderful husband named Ilya Hack, who is actually half Japanese and half American. So these are a picture. We received the blessing last year. And so yeah, so now you know a little bit about me. And so let me go into my topic.
Mom says she saw you every day. I'm not sure she said every day, but in the morning devotion.
Oh yeah, do you watch morning devotion? You should. All of you in this room should watch morning devotion.
I watch
I
morning
don't.
devotion with my mom.
That's great. That's great. That's great. So let's talk about our topic today, right? So our topic, like Joshua was saying, it's God language, right? Which means ways of connecting to God, right? Why am I talking about this topic? Because there are different ways we can connect to God, right? It's not just through prayer. It's not just through what we learn at church, but we have different ways of connecting to God. So I want to ask you this question, and if we can have maybe, let's say 3 minutes of like let's say 2 minutes of reflection. I want you guys to think about this question: who is God to you? Because before we talk about the ways of connecting to God, we need to understand who God is, right? And we learn about it at church. We learn about it at different camps, different events, but we really ourselves, we need to know who God is to us, right? So if we have, I don't know if there's a staff in this room, if we can have some maybe meditation music, or I can put it myself also. So you guys take like, let's say about 2 minutes. Think about this question. Who is God to you? Just reflect on that question for a second. All right. Let's see if we can get some meditation here. Think about this question. Who is God to you? And what does it mean to you? We'll have 2 minutes. Okay. I hope you took some time to think about that question. So you can just put in the chat, maybe write it on the chat. Who is God to you? What kind of answer did you come up with? There's no wrong or right answer. I just want to know who God is to you. If you said, for me, example, for me, I would say that God is my father. God is my parent. He's my father and my mother. God is my creator. He's always there for me. God is everything to me. So you can write on the chat whatever answer you came up with. Who is God to you? Let me see. God is the creator, said Clara Chang, my creator. Oh, a lot of creator. My father by Victor and Natasha. Love, my father. Nice, nice. Good answers. He's sort of like our happiness. Nice, Nia. Sedona, God is a parent to me, someone I look up to. Wow, such good answers. Amazing, amazing. So let's go to our next. Hold on. Let me just. Right. So with this next slide, I wanted to talk about the importance of connecting with God and experiencing his presence. So I asked you guys the question, who is God to you, right? And our topic today obviously is ways to connect with God. But why is it so important to connect with God, right? Why can we just go on with our daily lives and not even think about God and not even think about ways we can connect with God, right? Why is it so important to connect with God, and why are we talking about this topic? So the first thing that I thought of is knowing our value as God's sons and daughters, right? All of you in this room are valuable, right? You are God's sons and daughters. You are important to God. And so the moment that we connect with God and we come to experience God, we can know our value. We know who we are, and that leads to self-love and confidence, right? When we connect with God and God is within us, then we know that we are worth it and that God is always there for us and that God is our Father, right? So that we're valuable. The second thing that I thought of is, I don't know, maybe you guys, if you've ever felt this, maybe emptiness, or maybe you're angry, or maybe like you have this negative feelings that, that just won't go away. Well, connecting with God and experiencing God also helps us really get rid of that emptiness that we may feel sometimes. Right? Maybe you guys are too young to experience that, but with adults, when we go through a lot of things, we feel this emptiness and we feel like we can't connect to anybody, right? We go on vacation, you try to do something fun, but somehow you're still not connecting to anybody. You're still not feeling this wholeness that you're supposed to feel. So while connecting with God and feeling his presence helps us, it helps have this feeling of wholeness, right? Where you feel like you're loved, you feel that you're cared for, you feel like you can love everyone. And this is why it's so important to connect with God. The third thing that I thought of is trust in God leads to less negative feelings we experience. So the negative feelings that we may experience, like I said, may be hate, worry, any kind of like anxiety, or anything that you in your mind think is negative, right? So this connection with God and really experiencing God's love helps us get rid of those feelings, right? Because when you think about God, do you guys think God is the feeling of hate, of worry and anxiety is affiliated with God? No, right? God is always filled with love, peace, and joy. So the moment that we connect with God and feel his presence, then we have this amazing feeling of love, of peace and joy. We can be around our families, around our parents, and not feel any kind of hate. We come to this place where we're joyful, right? And the fourth thing that I thought of is more understanding of human responsibility and more love for humanity and others. What does that mean? It means, I don't know if you guys have heard this, but many times we look at the world and there's so many things happening, right? And we may think, why is this happening if God exists? Why is this happening if God is, our Father? Shouldn't he supposed to love us and give us joy, right? And peace? Well, the moment we come to connect with God and understand who God is, we come to understand that we as humans also have responsibility, right? We ourselves, we also have to love humanity. We have to love others. We have to love the people around us and love this planet Earth that God has given to us, right? So all the things that are happening, all the negative, the crime, the war, everything that happens, it's not because God doesn't love us. It's because as humans, we also have responsibility. And so we can only understand that when we come to to we can only understand that when we come to connect with God, right? When we come to this level of experiencing God's presence, and when God is within us, then we can love others even more, right? When God is within us, because I don't know if you know the say, but keep this in mind. I want you guys to keep this in mind, that wherever God is, love is, and wherever love is, God is, right? So when we have God within us, we can also love humankind easily. So as human responsibility, we have that presence of God within us, and that helps us love humankind and love the planet Earth, which will eventually make it better, right? So then the last thing I thought of is the strength and power to overcome anything that comes our way. So, certain times, of course, we go through a lot of things, right? We go through difficulties. Maybe you're going through something with your families, maybe with your friends at school. Maybe you're just tired. Maybe you feel like, oh, I can't do this. You know, I don't really understand this world. I don't understand my parents. I don't understand my family. Well, when we come to connect with God and have His presence within us, then we have the strength and power to overcome anything that comes our way, right? Even myself, I have an experience where I would go through a lot of, difficult times, but the moment that I connected with God and the moment that I was able to experience God's presence, then I had this overcoming, it was a strength and power that really helped me understand that I can go through anything. I can overcome anything that comes my way, right? So I want you guys to remember these. If you can take a picture or whatever it is, just remember these are why the importance of connecting with God and experiencing His presence, or connecting with God is important because of all of these bullet points, right? And there are many more that I may be missing, but these are what I thought of. They're the points that in my own life I've been able to understand. So let's go to the next one. So why are we talking about this topic again? We talked about the importance of connecting with God. We all desire a closeness with God, right? Yes or no? I want to hear someone at least say yes or no.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. All right. We all desire closeness with God. What does that mean? We all, even without knowing it, even if we're not aware of it, we all want to feel God, right? We all want to feel that presence of joy, of peace and love, right? We all want to feel that. But why is it so hard, right? So we'll get to that to the next slide. But have you ever had that empty feeling inside, like when you open and close the refrigerator door without finding what you want? Right? I know you guys go at night and then trying to find food in the refrigerator, right? I'm looking at all of you and you're smiling, so you know what I'm talking about. So that's that. It's an empty feeling that we may have, right? Like I mentioned in the last slide, it's this empty feeling that we may encounter sometimes, and we feel like, why is there's nothing, right? You open the fridge and you're like, oh, there's nothing I can eat. I'm just like, I'm just gonna go. Yeah, and you just close it, right? So that emptiness we may feel, sometimes we're not aware of it. Sometimes we don't realize that it's God that we need, and God is the only person who can fill up that hole or that emptiness that we may be having inside our hearts, right? So because we're made in the image of God, we have a desire in our spirit that is not satisfied until we experience the closeness of knowing His presence intimately. What does that mean? It means that when you're opening the fridge and closing it because there's nothing there, it's the same thing as your heart, right? Sometimes you feel that emptiness, an empty feeling inside of you, and you may not know what it is, but let me tell you a secret. A secret. A secret is that we're feeling that emptiness because our spirit, because we're made by God, we have a spirit that desires to get close to God, right? That's the reason why you said yes, right? You said, yeah, we need to, we really all desire a closeness with God. Well, that closeness with God is a feeling that our spirit needs, right? That our spirit is not satisfied until we experience that closeness of knowing God's presence. So that's why we have that empty feeling. And the only person who can fill it up is God. And each one of us desires closeness with God, even if we don't understand the desire inside. So as you guys, you're growing up, and I don't want to say your kids because you're here, right? You're already at a certain level where you can understand certain things. So each one of us here, including myself, when you have that empty feeling, just remember that your spirit is desiring a closeness with God, right? And we may not understand what that desire is. We may not understand that we're going through this emotion of emptiness, but God is the only person who can fill it up again. So let me go to the next slide. So we all desire closeness to God, right? And we know that it's important to feel God's presence. We know that it's important to connect with God. We know that God is the only person who can fill up that cup that's empty. But why is it so hard to experience God? Right? What do you guys think? Why is it so hard to experience God, even though we want to experience him, even though we want to be close to him and we want to feel him every day, so if you remember in the beginning, I said that God is love, is peace and joy, right? So why is it so hard sometimes to feel those kind of feelings, or to experience those kind of emotions of like joy, of peace and love? Why? Why is it so hard? Anybody has an answer?
Maybe
Just some.
because sometimes you can't actually see God or feel God, or
Hmm.
you don't see that God's there and you can't like feel that God's there.
Hmm. Anybody else? There's no right or wrong answer. I just want to know, why is it so hard to experience God sometimes? Victor and Natasha, why is it so hard to experience God sometimes?
Maybe it's because maybe you have to go through the hard times before you can see God.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. That's a good answer. Anybody else? Last answer? No? Okay. Great.
I have one.
Oh, you have one? Okay, go ahead.
So maybe sometimes it's hard, like Clara said, you can't physically see him.
Hmm.
There's some people who always degrade religions and like say like it's like you're delusional or something, and say like you can't see him and it's not true. So maybe people could be like dishonest about it, and it's hard to experience it when people are just raging against it.
Hmm. Wow, that's incredible, Kayla. Thank you. Thank you for that answer. All those answers were great. They were great. Like I said, there are no wrong or right answers. I just want to know how you guys feel about this topic and this question of why is it so hard to experience God? So the problem is, of course, God is not hiding, right? Um, and needs to be coaxed out into the open by our prayers and supplications. God is active in the world around us, right? God is willing to be in a relationship with us. But the problem is not with God, right? The problem is with us. We are sometimes unaware, or we barely aware of God. We're barely aware of God's presence. So we must learn to notice. And this is from a really nice book that I love from uh, Richard Peace. And it's such an amazing book that you can also, if you like reading, you can read it. But it is right, because sometimes the reason why we can't experience God is not because of God or God is hiding, right? God is like playing hide and seek, and then you have to, try to find him. But sometimes the problem is because we are unaware of the fact that God is around us all the time, right? Sometimes God is not only there when we're praying, God is around us every single day, every single minute, seconds, every day that we wake up, God is there with us, right? He's always next to us. He's not hiding. But sometimes, because of the environment, because of so many things that are happening, right? You wake up, the first thing you think about, what is it? What is the first thing that you think about? Food? School, right? What do you think about? There are so many things that you wake up and you think about those things, and then you forget about God, and then throughout the day you're not even aware of the fact that God is around you, right? So that is the problem, the unawareness of God's presence. So many people, and this is from Father, you guys all know Father, he says that many people are simply unaware there is a God, and millions more cannot even conceive that any sort of higher being exists. Nevertheless, whether a person is conscious of it or not, God is all around us, right? Awareness of that fact usually helps a person cope with his reality, even the disappointments and personal tragedies. Unfortunately, that very thing is a big part of mankind's problem. We are often not cognizant of the nearness of God, right? Is Father right or wrong? He is right? Because we are unaware of God's presence. Like Father says, God is all around us every single day, right? And when we are aware of God, like I said in the last slide, when we're aware of God's presence, it helps us cope with reality. Those realities may be disappointments, maybe your friends, maybe your family, maybe you guys haven't experienced a lot of disappointment or so many tragedies in your life. But even when you think of certain moments where you were sad, you were angry, you were, all those feelings, when you're aware of God's presence, God can comfort you, right? Even when you're going through some difficulties and you feel that, oh, I can't overcome this, I don't know how to overcome it, God is there around you. He wants to embrace you, He wants to hug you. All you have to do is be aware of it, right? All you have to do is have that awareness and recognize that God is near you. So, awareness of God. Many people are simply unaware there is a God, right? This is I made a mistake, but this is the same thing as last slide. But I want to read this second one, and this is also by Father, and he says, God is present. He's present in our lives at all times. If on occasion we encounter some clouds, it does not mean that God has gone away from us. Even when we cannot see it, the light of God's love still shines. When you feel miserable, try to remember that God feels the same way. Those are the times it is so easy to give in to Satan and listen only to his voice. Those are the times we seem to shut out God and refuse to hear his imploring. That becomes overpowered by the words of Satan's promises to us. The more we can become aware of God's presence and conscience of the involvement of spirit world in our lives, the more easily we will receive answers in prayer, and the more happy and fulfilled we will feel. It is part of our challenge to discover the obstacles. The next step is to accept our responsibility and try harder to surmount them. So from this reading, it's a little bit long, but what I want you to remember, like we said in the last slide, is that God is always around you. And when you're feeling, like Father says, that when you remember that when you feel miserable, try to remember that God feels the same way. Why does God feel the same way? A lot of you in the chat mentioned that God is your father. God is our creator, right? God is your mother, or whoever God was to you when I asked that question. Well, why is God feeling miserable when we feel miserable? Why do you guys think? Do you have an answer? Why is it that when we're sad, and Father is saying that when we're sad, when we're miserable, God feels the same way? Nelson.
I think God feels miserable when we're miserable because He is our parent, and parents
Mm.
feel want to feel the same thing the children does and wants to comfort them.
Mm, exactly. That's exactly the answer. Because God he's our parent and he wants to comfort us, right? You can take an example as your own parents, right? If you are at home and you feel sad and you feel miserable, do your parents just look at you when you're crying and just leave? No, right? They want to comfort you. Even myself, even in my own, right? I'm already old, but even when I'm miserable and I'm sad, my parents still call me. They still call me to check up on me. How are you? How was your day? Are you okay? That's the same way God feels because He's our Father, right? Because He's our parent, every time we feel miserable, God is always there. So the point is that I want you guys to remember the moment that you're feeling sad or the moments that you feel miserable or you just don't know, you have that empty feeling, remember, just close your eyes and remember that God is next to you. God is there with you and he feels the same way and he wants to hug you. He wants to say, "Wow, my lovely daughter, my lovely my handsome son. I love you so much and I feel the same way as you feel. And I just want to hug you. I just want to love you." Right? That's what God feels every time. And we just have to be aware of it, right? So awareness of God is the key to feeling his presence. Just think about God, right? Have you guys ever noticed that when you think about something, it sometimes it just appears. Like for me, example, right? My husband and I, we love cars. And every time we think about one car, we see it. It's like that awareness of like, oh, this is a nice car. And then the next day you see it, right? It's that awareness of having to think about something, right? So when you think about God, automatically you will see that God's presence will be around you and you will be able to feel God's presence, right? You may have a different example of something that you might have thought of, and when you think about that one thing, it becomes true. So, or you start seeing it around you or feeling it. That's the same thing with God, that awareness of God. And so I believe this is my last slide. Or my yeah. So ways to experience God. God is in everything and He is everywhere, right? God's presence can be experienced in a number of different ways. God's presence can feel like liquid of love. It can feel like a lightness or joy in your heart. It can feel like a deep sense of knowing something. It can also feel like strength to face difficulties. God's presence can feel like something greater than yourself is at work in the situation. Different people feel God's presence in varying ways. However, God's presence, remember what I said in the first or second slide. However, this is why I put this in bold. However, God's presence is always, always peace, love, and joy. Never anxiety, fear, or hate, right? God's presence is always filled with peace, love, and joy. And you may experience God's presence in different ways. Like I said, you can experience it in like, wow, I'm so happy. I went, on vacation with my parents. I feel so much joy. I feel so much love for my parents. That is also God, right? That feeling of love, of joy, and peace is God's presence. And sometimes we're not aware of it, but those feelings are what we can recognize God's presence through those feelings, right? It can feel like a deep knowing of something as well. Like maybe you are at school and then you understand something and you just feel great. You feel like you can do anything. You feel so empowered. You feel like I am strong. I can do anything. I can be anyone. You have that power, and that power, where do you think it comes from? It comes from God. But sometimes we're not aware of it, right? But God is giving us that power and that feeling of joy, love, and peace. So as we end today, I want you guys to remember that every day that you're going to school or anything that you do in your daily life, remember those feelings. Every time you feel that, even when you feel fear, even when you feel anxiety and fear and sadness, right? Remember that God is next to you and He wants to hug you. He wants to bring this peaceful and love and joyful environment. right? Does that make sense? Does that make sense to you guys? So even if God's feeling is peace, love, and joy, it doesn't mean that when you experience anxiety, fear, and sadness, God is away from you. Or like God is just telling you, oh, you can deal with your own thing. I'm just going to leave you there. You can cry. No, even at in difficult moments, difficult situation, God is with you. And he wants to bring this emotion or this feeling of peace, love, and joy to you because you are his daughter, you are his son. So, with the last slide, I want you guys to consider yourself watched and guided by God at all times. Like a parent, he watches his children as they grow and mature. Out of his deep love, he wants you to become a stable and faithful person. And that is why all of us go through many kinds of endeavors and confrontations, and each day is so different from the next. Learn a new lesson from the experiences you have each day. God is compassionate. He understands your problems well. The relationship we can have with God is not only created by relating to God and talking about Him for a few hours. The relationship must continue in some way through speaking or listening, but through also reflecting on God, right? Through our involvement and activity, it is when we try to manifest the divinity and nature of God that we will develop a more intense and heartfelt relationship with Him. So what does this mean? This conclusion means that you guys should be, after this talk, my hope, my desire is that as my younger brothers and sisters, I want you guys to consider that God is always watching you all the time, right? And not like a creepy watching, like, oh, like Santa Claus, like he watches when you're doing something bad and then you get no gift. No, not like that. But he watches you as his children because he wants you to grow and mature, right? He wants you to become a stable and faithful person. A person who can conquer the world, a person who can be so bold, so confident, so amazing, right? So loving to the entire world. That's the kind of person that God wants us to be. And so I want you to remember that even when you're going through difficult times, know that God is there with you, right? You're not alone. God is there with you all the time. All you have to do is be aware of it. So anytime that you're going through difficulties, just think of that. Think of what Diane said. Diane said that God is always there, right? Through difficult times, through anything that we go through, God is there with you because we are his children, right? And so that's the end of my presentation. But as we end today, I just want you guys to remember that. And for me, really, my hope is to see you guys thrive. And even with True Mother, where you guys see True Mother, she really, really wants us to become people who are so incredible, right? So amazing that when people look at you, I'm pretty sure that you've experienced this at school, that how you guys are so different. It's because you have God around you, even if you're not aware of it. Someone can ask you, I remember when I was a kid, someone used to ask me like, why are you so different, right? All of us here in this room are different, and it's because God is around us. God is always around us, and he wants us to grow and become better. So why don't we take at least maybe, let's take 2 minutes. I think we're going to go back to the breakout room at 1:20, I believe. Yeah, so let's take maybe just a minute. I don't know if that's enough, but even when you go into the main room, just reflect on this topic of God's presence and really be able to feel him. And you can feel God anywhere, right? For me, example, I feel God through prayer. I feel God through conditions, but it doesn't mean you guys feel God the same way, right? You can feel God through nature. You can feel God through cooking. You can feel God through dancing or singing, right? There are different ways of feeling God. So do not be judged. Do not feel judged if you can't feel God through prayer or you can't feel God through doing kyombes and conditions, because those are still important to do every day, but sometimes it's not our God language, right? It's not the way that we experience God ourselves. And I know even from my husband, he feels God through nature. And for me, I feel God through prayer, but we combine those two together and we do it together, right? So, anyway, if you have a way that you feel God, please go ahead. Feel God the way that you do. It can be through anything because God is always there. God is through anything. He's everywhere. So I hope you guys really learned something from this. And yeah, I don't know when we're going back. I don't know. Do we have any staff in this room?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we'll be going back shortly. But
Oh,
there it is.
right there.
Oh, there we go.
But thank you so
Right.
much, Diane.
Thank you.
Diane.
Yeah,
Thank
everyone
you.
Everyone
utilize
show her
the
some love.
reactions,
Yeah, comment.
perhaps.
Yeah.